In the readings today, Jesus is on this sheep kick again. And for us to understand what he's talking about, we have to understand what the sheep and the shepherd relationship is all about. Jesus uses the sheep and the shepherd relationship as a metaphor for God's intense love for us. And we see in the first reading from the Old Testament that God in the Old Testament uses that same metaphor, that he describes the evil that has come to the chosen people by way of poor shepherds, and so he will send them new shepherds that will lead them and guide them in the right path. Now, shepherding is simply a metaphor for love, and all of us have love relationships in our lives. Who in here loves somebody? And the rest of you, what's your problem? This love relationship is something that calls us to heroic action sometimes. In the gospel today, Jesus and his disciples, to put the gospel back in its proper context, the disciples had just come back. If you remember last week's gospel, they had just come back from their first missionary journey. He had sent them out 2 by 2, remember? And they were coming back to relate to Jesus what had happened. And it says they were so tired and so busy with people asking things. You ever have a day like that? Ever have a day like that? That they didn't even have time to eat. So Jesus said, let's get in the boat. We'll go across to some place in the desert and we'll rest. Well, the people saw them leaving, and so they hot-footed it around the lake on foot and beat them there. Instead of pulling the boat back out from shore, Jesus went in and said, let's take care of them. I remember when I was a college chaplain, I'd had a horrendous day one day, and I finally got to bed around midnight, and at 2 a.m. the phone rang. And it was a college student who obviously was at a party and said to me, because you could hear all the activity in the background, and says to me, "Hey, Padre." And I knew this wasn't a sick call. And I said, "Yes." And he says, "What do you call that big hat with a point on it that the bishop wears?" They apparently had a bet going. And so I told him it was called a mitre. Instead of speaking to me, he was speaking to whoever else was in the room and said, "Yeah, see, I told you." Never did say goodbye. Now, that's what shepherding's about. That you could have screamed at him, you could have wrung his neck. I knew who he was. I could have heard him yet the next day, but you don't. And when you're shepherding, when you're caring for those that you love, when you're caring for your children, there are times when you just are at your wit's end. But when they are in need, you care for them anyway. And when you're caring for your parents, and you don't want to hear one more time about how tough it was when they went to school, you care anyway. And so what Jesus is trying to tell us is that we're all shepherds. That anyone who's involved in a love relationship is a shepherd. And that there are times that each of us get called to heroic love. That even when we're tired, we serve the needs of the one we love. And that relationship reflects God's love for us. That Jesus, the Good Shepherd, not only loved us, but loved us unto his death, was willing to die because he loved us. And so as shepherds, all of us, you and me, are called to die for the people we love. The little deaths of giving up sleep to care for someone in need, of changing our schedule to be with someone that we love, of overlooking the idiosyncrasies of people that we love, of accepting our children where they are for what they are, of accepting our parents and caring for them, of taking care and shepherding the people with whom we live in our homes, taking care of and shepherding the people with whom we work. And that very curious teaching of Jesus, loving our enemies, dealing with those that we simply do not like. We have to shepherd them too. So as you and I pray today, we need to think of ourselves as shepherds. We need to take that imagery which Jesus used and realize that shepherding is what it means to be baptized. That all of us are in a love relationship. That all of us have people that we love and are loved by. And therefore we must take the example of the Good Shepherd, who even when he was tired and worn out and hadn't even eaten, still served his sheep. Because ultimately love is not about us, but about the other. Love is ultimately not about our convenience or our comfort, but the welfare and the health of the other. So reflect today on that image of sheep and shepherd. It's a very intense relationship, and in Jesus' culture, the Bedouins who lived by themselves were bonded together with their sheep because they were alone with them for hours. It's out of that culture that so much music and poetry came, because the shepherds spent so much alone time with the sheep. And they depended on the sheep. They depended on the sheep for their livelihood and for companionship and to keep them from loneliness. And the sheep depended on them to take them to good pasture, to keep them safe from the wolf, to keep them alive. It's a relationship, and when we give, we receive. But if we never give and only take, we never experience the depth of love. As you and I work today and do whatever it is, whether we're a teenager or an old person or a middle-aged person, no matter who we might be, if the focus is only on you, then you're not loving. Our focus has to be on the people we love, and we have to be willing to serve them no matter what. So let us be shepherds today, and let us be aware of that that's our role in heroic love, to reach out and to embrace the needs of others. Go visit someone who's sick today. Pick up the phone, write a letter. Reach beyond yourself today and die 1,000 little deaths so that someone else can be loved. We are the shepherds. It's up to us. Be at peace.